a reaction to Ethan Chlebowski's "Why Learning How to Make Lo Mein Changed My Life." So this should be pretty interesting because lo mein, I'm close to home. Like I remember, like our family sometimes buying these lo mein noodles and sauce packets, and we just kind of like hash together some sort of like dinner based off of like just stir frying the noodles along with like various meats and veggies. So this should be fun. Like learning about like the different intricacies and how I guess a white man what goes about doing lo mein, huh? And like really get into the weeds of it. So without further ado, let's get into it.
In this video, we're doing a deep dive into lo mein, and I'm going to show you 3 very different versions you can make. But first, I need to tell you why I was wrong about lo mein.
You were wrong about lo
mein.
mein.
I've never really been a big fan of this dish, and that's mainly because every time I order it for takeout, it looks like this.
Oh, that's your problem. It's takeout.
Any protein or vegetables, and the flavor is just fine.
Of course, it's not never going to be as good.
I'd always rather be going to town on something like Sichuan beef or Kung Pao chicken instead. However, that completely
not real events. Yeah, it'd be weird if you had a clone
making
of
it at
yourself.
home.
You were just comparing yourself to
lo mein is one of the most useful dishes you can learn for 3 reasons. First, it's one of the easiest ways to turn random fridge leftovers into a great weeknight meal. Second, it's incredibly customizable. Once you understand the framework, you can make a high protein, low calorie version, or go all in on something like a spicy beef lo mein that will surely tickle the taste buds. And third, which is the biggest one, it makes what might be the best leftovers of all time. So throughout this video, we're going to break down the lo mein framework, and I'll show
noodles,
you
sauce,
all
aromatics,
the
protein,
I made
and
to make
veggies.
3 different versions, and by the end, I promise you'll
Love
know how to create
love the pasta
glossy,
dishes.
deeply seasoned noodles with crisp vegetables,
I guess technically
tender flavorful protein.
it's pasta because they're noodles, but I don't know if they would consider those
I'm
noodles.
Meet you back here
those
for
pasta.
a final taste test with our 3 homemade versions versus this takeout version. But to start, let's talk.
It's like I
about
think
the noodles.
isn't pasta usually just like noodles made out of like
because of one thing,
semolina flour, isn't it? Well, these ones are usually just either egg or
Traditionally,
wheat.
lo mein uses a wheat-based noodle, and sometimes they'll be made with egg, like these fresh lo mein noodles, which gives them that slight yellow color, and more importantly, that springy, chewy texture that holds up really well to the sauce.
No, it's okay. Don't worry, Grumpy.
And how you cook your noodles is really important, because if you go to a buffet or a lot of takeout spots, those lo mein noodles have usually been cooked ahead of time and are sitting around in the sauce, so by the time you actually eat them, they're just kind of soft and not that interesting. However, when you make them at home, you have full control. You can cook them fresh and keep that springy
noodle
chewy bite,
dishes
which
than
I
pasta.
find
Possibly,
absolutely
like
addictive.
noodle dishes are also
Now, the biggest
awesome.
mistake that most people make when it comes to the noodles are not knowing which ones to buy.
Yeah, look at all that.
Definitely some differences. However, if you go to an Asian grocery store, you're usually going to see 3 main categories. First are fresh noodles. These are often coated in a little bit of starch to keep them from sticking, and then need to be boiled for a few minutes like fresh pasta. Second are par-cooked noodles. These noodles are partially cooked and then lightly coated in a bit of oil, so they're very quick to work with.
Yeah,
and
that's usually the ones that we
dried
get.
which are more similar to something like a dried pasta and need to be fully cooked in boiled water before using. Now, you can absolutely use things like spaghetti, ramen, or really any stir-fry noodle and still get a good result. But I do think it's worth grabbing either the fresh or par-cooked noodles when you can, because part of the fun is just those slight differences in the shape and texture. And I found 3 different versions at the store that I want to try.
So much showcasing
lo mein, I'm
of
use
carbs.
Standard fresh lo mein noodles. For the spicy beef, I found these thicker broad noodles, which you can see they've just got a bit more texture to them for the sauce.
A little bit
and
more
then
flatter
for the
noodles.
high protein version, I found these thinner noodles. I'm going to use slightly less noodles, so I want them evenly spread throughout the dish. And now that we have our noodle choices, the next big mistake that most people make after buying them is just overcooking the noodles. So whatever the package says, I would recommend sticking to the lower end of that range, because they're going to cook a little bit more once they are tossed with the sauce. And this brings us to our second component and a question that I've had for a long time.
That cooking, traditional cooking, and as well as carryover cooking.
And chow mein. I've never fully understood the difference here, because the way these terms are used and what dish is actually served to you at a restaurant could definitely vary quite a bit from place to place.
Yeah,
but
probably
as
at this
far as
point
I
with
can tell,
Americanized
the key difference
versions.
should be how the noodles are actually cooked with the sauce. Linguistically, chow mein translates to stir-fried noodles, which would mean they're cooked directly in the pan, and you actually want to develop some browning or crispness on the noodles themselves. And like other stir-fries, seasonings and sauces are typically added, but it's definitely on the drier side. Lo mein, on the other hand, translates to tossed noodles, and while it's still made in the wok, you are essentially tossing the noodles with the sauce rather than focusing on kind of stir-frying them until they're crisp. Now, in practice, there's definitely some overlap and inconsistency here. Like, I've definitely ordered a chow mein that was fairly saucy.
I guess it really
you might wanna
depends on like how
ask your waiter if you are ordering this dish.
How
However,
like strict
the best part, again, about making
the menu
home
is
that you can control the texture exactly how you like it.
Look how saucy those noodles
the tricky
are.
part when it comes to the sauce is everybody makes it slightly different. And if you watch a bunch of recipes online, it's actually pretty hard to tell what every ingredient is doing. So I'm going to break down the general sauce flavor
oyster
profile,
sauce,
then show you the 3 specific variations
soy sauce
I
and all
made,
that stuff.
so we can see how the ingredients are going to change the flavor in the final taste test. At a high level, lo mein sauce is primarily salty and umami with a little bit of sweetness, some savory aromas, and then we want the texture thick enough so it clings to the noodles. And once you understand that, all of these ingredients you'll see in recipes start to make a lot more sense because they're playing these
Such a big biteful.
So first, we have the salty and umami ingredients. These are things like the oyster sauce, light soy sauce,
I love some
dark
oyster
soy
sauce and some
and
stuff.
chicken bouillon. They're all primarily bringing salty and umami taste.
Chicken bouillon
Then you have
powder.
your sweet ingredients. Oyster sauce actually has some sugar in it already, but you'll
you
typically
need
see
more.
plain sugar added as well, and other options could be honey or even something like hoisin. Now, the goal isn't to make it so sweet like a sweet and sour sauce, for example. It's more just to have enough sweetness to balance out the salt and make everything more rounded.
Yeah, I don't want to
Finally, we have
oversalt
what I think
things.
of as the aroma and finishing ingredients. So these are things like
Together.
sesame oil or
It's
chili
European
oil,
emphasis.
white pepper,
Hey, no worries.
chicken broth, water,
It's
or
all
some
good.
Chinese
You can
cooking
pasta
wine.
alone.
And all of these are going to add
Said,
a little
it's
fragrance
it's
and
awesome learning about
complexity
these
and
sort
make
of
that
things.
sauce feel more complete. And lastly, there's typically a thickener like a cornstarch slurry to make it all saucy and cohesive.
Yeah, I gotta make it a little bit gloopy.
Now that we understand the core elements at play here, let me show you the 3 different versions of the sauce that I made. For the classic takeout version, I started with 2 parts or 50 grams of oyster sauce, then 1 part of soy sauce, but I split this up into 20 grams of light soy sauce and 5 grams of dark soy sauce. Then I added a spoonful of chicken bouillon powder along with 10 grams of sugar, and I finished it with some white pepper and a splash of water just to thin out the sauce. And this first one is a pretty classic, slightly sweeter profile.
White pepper
which,
is
as
like
you can
pretty
see,
intense
create
from
that
what
nicely seasoned noodle with that
me and my
slight
family have
brownish
worked
tint.
with.
Now, if we take a look at the spicy beef lo mein, you'll notice the noodles are quite a bit darker, and this is because I changed a few ingredients. Again, I started with that 50 grams of oyster sauce, but this time I went for just 10 grams of light soy sauce and then added 10 grams of dark soy sauce,
Yeah,
so
that'll
quite
do
a
it.
bit more. I also added 5 grams of beef bouillon, and I didn't add any extra sugar, so this is going to give us a darker, more savory sauce. And the reason this works is because it's going to stand up to the rest of the dish, which is richer beef, heavier spicy aromatics, so everything is going to stay balanced instead of getting washed out. Then lastly, if we look at the chicken lo mein, this is going to have the lightest of all the sauces. So for this one, I used 25 grams of light soy sauce, 10
oyster
grams
sauce
of
at
sugar,
all.
15 grams of oyster sauce, 5 grams
Oh,
of
wait, no,
some
there's
chicken
some,
bouillon,
there's some.
and then just added water to
But
thin
no
it out.
dark soy
So
sauce, so
to sum it
that's
up, we
why
kind of have
like, a
3
lot of the
different
color is
sauce
not
flavor
added
profiles. First, we have that balanced, salty, umami,
You can see some particulates inside of like the classic
then
one.
we have that darker, roastier sauce, which is
Probably,
going
I
to hold
think,
up really
due
well
to
to
some
the
of,
beef
like,
and
the
the chilies.
powders.
And lastly, a lighter chicken-forward
the
sauce
spice
that
mix?
is going to pair very well with lots
Comes
of
in the shape
vegetables.
of a square.
And once you've chosen your sauce,
I think like
this is where
chicken
things
bouillon
start
powder
to
is probably
open
just
up,
like
because
chicken
next,
bouillon
we're gonna
stuff,
layer
but
in
crushed
the
up.
fresh aromatics. And this is a very fun area of lo mein you can experiment with.
Aromatics are pretty fun. Like
The way
onion's always the
aromatics
classic.
work is simple. Dice or mince them up, add them to the hot oil to bloom, and then pour your sauce over the top. And this fresh aromatic layer is going to balance the richness of the sauce and make the dish feel more complete. Now, traditionally, lo mein keeps it pretty simple, usually just some garlic and maybe some ginger. But at home, you can use up any aromatic vegetable you may happen to have laying around. This could be ginger, leeks, fresh chilies, onions, shallots, any pepper, or any vegetable that's aromatic. So for my versions, I went in 3 different aromatic directions. For the first one, I kept it simple with just a lot of garlic. You can't really go wrong there.
Yeah, garlic usually adds in a lot of flavors, like especially
bird's eye chilies.
Especially
and this
when
is where
cooked
I'm gonna
up.
build in that heat and intensity. The chilies are gonna bring that sharp, punchy spice that is gonna
especially
help
with the seeds in there too. That's gonna add a lot of capsaicin.
Then, for the lighter chicken lo mein, I went with the classic ginger and garlic combo. The ginger just helps keep everything fresh and almost clean while making that dish feel light and on your feet, ready to go after a workout. So now that we have our noodles,
I like ginger in
like you could
small amounts and like in sauces and all that stuff, like not actual ginger.
But to me,
like,
where
eaten
this dish becomes
kind of raw cooked.
useful and almost kind of life-changing is in the proteins in vegetables, because this is where lo mein turns into a system. You can make it lighter, you can make it high protein, you can use up leftovers or build it around whatever you have in your fridge.
All right.
So let me show you the choices that I made for the vegetables and protein, but try to keep in mind the choices that you may want to make as we go.
Last one is like
for the protein, the process is simple. We're first going to lightly marinate it, then just cook everything separately in a high heat wok to develop some browning. And the three most common options you'll see at a takeout spot are chicken, beef, and shrimp. So that's what I'm doing today.
I guess so.
Starting with the shrimp, I added some frozen, peeled, and deveined shrimp into a bowl, and then added a sprinkle of salt and just a tiny
I'm not much of a seafood person,
oil.
so chicken and beef are probably going to be my go-tos.
Tender and just have that little bit of
like
sesame
I like
aroma.
Chicken
now,
like
for the beef,
breast.
I'm doing a slightly more involved marinade. So
pork's
I
also
started by
probably
slicing
pretty
a piece
good
of
too.
sirloin into strips, but really any cut of beef will work. Then I added the beef to a bowl along with a splash of light soy sauce, a little bit of sugar, a pinch of baking soda to help tenderize it, a spoonful of chili
like doing
crisp
like
with
the
some
baking
heat
soda
and
thing to help
then a bit
like
of cornstarch to help it
this actually
brown
helps
and stay juicy.
a lot.
Mix that together and you get these nicely coated, well-seasoned pieces of beef. Then for the chicken,
very much Chinese takeout like.
Simple here. A splash of light soy sauce, a little chicken bouillon powder to really boost that chicken flavor, some sesame oil for more aroma, and then a bit of Chinese cooking wine. Mix that up, and you've got a really clean, well-seasoned base. And now that we've got our proteins
for my family, we tend to not do too much like
really starts to shine. Because the vegetables
marination,
bring the color,
like our typical like marinade for meats is just
appeal.
a combination of soy sauce and teriyaki sauce, and that usually gets us pretty far.
So the general approach is simple. First, we're going to choose a variety of colored vegetables. Then we're going to slice the vegetables to roughly match the shape of the noodles, so longer and thinner pieces. Then we're going to cook the hearty vegetables in the wok with a little salt or soy sauce and a splash of Chinese cooking wine. And lastly, stir the fresher vegetables in at the end. So these are things like bean sprouts and scallions. So for a shrimp version, I went pretty classic with carrots, red onion, cabbage.
One vegetable that we usually love to cook in with the pot itself is
cabbage first.
Like
then once
bok
everything else is
choy,
in there, I threw the sprouts
as well as like I guess galan, which is like a sort of like a Chinese broccoli technically.
I used some bell peppers,
for you,
carrots, green onions,
extremely
and
mild.
then I found these really nice mushrooms.
Hey, no worries,
this is a good
that's
example
okay.
of thinking
Like
about contrast. You've got the
I can handle some
mushrooms,
spice, but not a lot.
and everything's gonna play
myself,
off each other
despite
nice
being
visually.
Asian myself.
Then
So
for the chicken version,
it's all
to make
good.
a
It's all
lower
good.
calorie version,
There's no like
vegetables. I use some Chinese broccoli, yellow squash, bell pepper,
there's no
red onion,
no
and
judgment
bean
here.
sprouts, which are tossed in at the end. And as you can see, all of these choices really layer together. They're all lo mein, but visually they have a completely different
Fresh lo mein,
feel
thicker flat
depending
noodles, and
on
thin
the
round
vegetables
noodles.
we use.
Like
So
pak
now
choy,
let's do
but
a final taste
very
test
wrong when I
and
tried.
compare them
How
to
did
the
you prepare
takeout
it?
version.
Because usually for me and my family, when we do like bok choy and all that stuff, just cooking it as like a side dish,
but it's
you
always
just
so illuminating when you actually taste
just kind of fry it up
side. So let's do
in
just that.
oil and then splash oyster sauce on it when it gets pretty soft.
Feels like it's mostly
It usually
noodles.
does it
like
pretty
there
well.
are some vegetables, there's some bell peppers, there's a little broccoli in here. There are some pieces of chicken, but overall it kind of feels like more of noodles. But let's give it a shot. So I've not ordered from this particular
for
place
veggies,
before, but I would say that
I
echoes
don't
my
think we
common
really
experience
marinate
with lo mein, and
vegetables
why I was never a big
like
fan
meat
of it.
stew.
It's kind of one of those dishes where
in the pan
it's just
we
kinda
usually
fun.
add
It doesn't
in
make me feel anything.
oyster
It's
sauce
a dish
to
that
toss
I
in
would
with
hope
it.
maybe someone else would order so I could have like a bite or two of it, but I would much rather be ordering a lot of other things on the menu.
Stealing a bite from other
However,
person's
like
food,
I said,
huh?
that changed when I started making it at home, and as you can see right away, visually with the ratios of kind of the noodles and proteins, very different in our homemade versions, and that's why I think it's just such a good dish to
like
make
a
at
meat
home
thing.
because
yeah.
noodles versus
I
mostly
said
protein and vegetables
for
are
marinate
kinda
for
half and half,
marinating
rather.
meats to me
Not to
sunflower
mention the
oil.
different flavor
I said
profiles as well.
meats we usually a very typical marinade we do is just soy sauce and teriyaki sauce.
And noodle-wise,
just kind of mix in there. It's very easy, very simple.
Kind of takeout version. Again,
we use so much sunflower
a little bit
seed,
thicker,
sunflower
which
oil.
I like over the takeout version. And then the sauce
is there like a
little
defined
bit sweet,
taste to
little
the
umami,
sunflower
little
oil?
salty,
I
but
don't think
not
I've had it
any way
very much.
overpowering. Just like a good classic, you could mix up this version with any variety of like vegetables and proteins. You're going to be in for a good time. However, now we're going to move to number 2, and this is the spicy beef lo mein.
Spicy beef,
which
yeah.
I love spicy stuff, so this is not something that you could really order a lot of places. So
yeah.
More beefy sauce, spicy components in here. Let's get into it.
You didn't have any sort of like chicken like bouillon into the sauce, so it's all beef.
For me, I think this is like the best lo mein that I've ever had, because I kind of made it exactly how I wanted it.
Butter? Oh, okay, interesting.
But the spiciness you get from those Thai bird's eye chilies, and then the sauce isn't quite as sweet, but it's much more savory from kind of that the beef bouillon we put in there, and then the tender beef pieces are just really nice to bite into. And then I really like that mix of kind of the mushroom with the bell peppers, and you get a little freshness from those scallions in there. For me, this is probably the best lo mein I've ever had.
Ooh, clarified butter. Dang,
I think noodle-wise,
fancy.
These are a decent option, although I think I do like the texture of kind of those fresh lo mein noodles. A little bit thicker. These are a little bit thinner, but still really, really good. And lastly, let's kind of go to our healthy chicken
about 300
so more vegetables.
This is about 300 fewer calories.
Noodles to kind of lower the calorie count.
Yeah, like reduce the amount of noodles and more veggies. Makes sense.
It's crazy how the ginger comes through in this. It makes such a big difference. Like, you get Thai chilies here, you get kind of just garlic here. The ginger just, it makes it feel more healthy. I really like ginger.
Kind of trick your brain into it, huh?
For being like a lower calorie, kind of healthier version, this one is surprisingly good. So this taste test totally sums up why I'm such a big fan of making lo mein at home. Each of these kind of brings something else to the table.
It's just easy to splash whatever you have
over
and
the
just
takeout
sort of
version,
into a
which
pan
is
with
fine,
the noodles and
but
just
again, when you
just
can
fry
mix
it
in
up.
more vegetables, when you can change your sauces, change up the aromatics, and really shape the direction of your dish, it's really, really fun. So we're gonna have recipes for each of these linked down below.
Oh, hey.
As well as in the
on their
Cookwell
website,
app.
huh?
We're gonna have a lo mein framework as well, where you can actually edit your ingredients to match whatever you may have in the fridge, freezer, and pantry to make some great lo mein at home. But anyway, that is going to wrap it up for me in this one. Let me know which version of these you want to make down below, but I will catch you all in the next one. Peace, y'all.
No worries. Thank you very much. But yeah, I said, for me, it's usually probably going to be pretty simple. Just like the lo mein noodles with beef or chicken, and then it was a really cool video, along with like bok choy as well as maybe some green vegetables. But yeah, very simple. Yeah, please let me know what you all thought of Ethan's little analysis of lo mein and just how fun it can be, just tossing everything you've got into a pot with some noodles and just frying it up. All right, everybody, thank you all very much for watching, and I'll see you all next time. Bye.